The Bogside Murals were created by 3 artists who live and work in the Northern Ireland city of Derry. The murals depict the events surrounding the sectarian violence and the struggle to pursue civil rights in Northern Ireland from the 1960s through the present day. The murals are located in the Bogside area of Derry, an area that for 400 years has been where the Catholic population has lived. It was boggy land, undesirable land, and thus the Catholics, as a subjugated population, were pushed to this land to live. As history unfolded, this area of Derry became the focal point of the struggle against the sectarianism and discrimination. The Bogside was ground zero for action, sometimes violent, taken by the Irish Republican Army against the British troops there to keep the peace between the Protestant and Catholic populations, and the actions by the British troops, also often violent, against the IRA and the civilians living in the Bogside. As one walks the ancient stone walls that circle the innermost section of the city of Derry, the Bogside is on the outside of the walls and in a valley. The murals themselves were painted beginning in 1994 on the sides of the apartment buildings in the Bogside. They replaced graffiti and were the inspiration of the people who lived there. Over the years, the artists have added to the number of murals so that now there are 12. They are called the People's Gallery. I will explain 11 of them, as one of them was renovated when I was there. Civil rights. This mural depicts the role of peaceful civil rights marches in the late 1960s in Derry. Caught up in the wave of civil rights protests that were happening in the United States and led by leaders such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Northern Ireland groups opposed to the sectarianism and discrimination began organizing marches to call for equal rights, an end to hiring based on creed, and greater political freedoms. These marches brought out all ages and sectors of the Catholic community, and even some in the Protestant community. At first, these marches were tolerated by the political leaders. However, they were ultimately outlawed, and the enforcement of such is what led to the use of British forces to, quote, keep the peace. The reaction by the Protestant paramilitary organizations and the local police force in collusion with the British forces also created much violence. Ultimately, these flare-ups led to the Battle of the Bogside. Bernadette. Bernadette Devlin was a young university woman elected to Parliament, but who helped promote the civil rights marches. When those marches erupted into violence in 1969, she shocked many who thought females, and especially politicians, should stay above the fray. She organized from within the Bogside, where CS gas was used by the, quote, B specials, or the paramilitary forces, to disperse crowds. In the midst of the gas was Bernadette, using her megaphone, marshalling her forces, the civilians living in the Bogside, to use pavers to throw at the B specials. The young woman with the trash can lid in the foreground depicts the use of such ordinary objects to create noise and to rally the residents to action. The British troops showed up to prevent further violence for both sides, but the appreciation felt towards them by the residents of the Bogside was not to last. Petrol Bomber. This was the first mural created by the Bogside artists in 1994 and depicts the Battle of the Bogside in 1969. The image painted was a montage of images. The young boy wearing the gas mask came from the cover of a magazine and is actually a cousin of 2 of the artists. The gas in the background represents the tear gas frequently deployed by the police and the military forces against the people of the Bogside. The apartment building, the Rossville Flats, is pictured as it was the location of much of the drama in the Bogside. It is no longer present in Derry, as it was eventually condemned and torn down. The police force is painted on the left. They are the Royal Ulster Constabulary, the RUC, and much loathed by the population in the Bogside for their oppressive tactics. The child wears a badge that shows a map of Northern Ireland to represent what he is fighting for. A child caught up in the Battle of the Bogside is emblematic of children everywhere caught up in violence. That this was a real event only added to its poignancy. The face of the child holding a petrol bomb gives a face to the struggle for oppressed people everywhere. This is the most famous of the Bogside murals. The artists used classic compositional techniques, such as an X framework based off of the boy's shoulders, and the use of the golden mean, that point on the image, which is that point on the image where the badge of Northern Ireland falls, and is the intersection of where the image is divided into thirds. Bloody Sunday. The Bloody Sunday events unfolded on January 30th, 1972, when a civil rights march banned by the politicians was held anyway. Although peaceful, British military forces sought to stop the march. Local kids threw rocks at the well-armed forces, and then the order was given to bring in the paratroopers, Britain's invasion force used in wars and to fight attacking armies. They began shooting protesters, killing 13 on that day and another one dying later. When the violence ended that day and the tear gas had settled, the political landscape would never be the same. The once insignificant IRA would swell with new members drawn from residents of the Bogside. Civil protests in the form of civil rights marches would end. The compositional technique points downward to the bloodied banner of the Civil Rights Association. The white handkerchief draws the eye in toward the dead protester and is symbolic in that it is waved by Father Edward Daly, a prominent figure in the struggle. The Bloody Sunday Commemoration Mural. Created in 1997 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday riots, this mural is a commemoration of the 14 individuals who lost their lives on that day in 1972 when British forces shot peaceful civil rights marchers in Derry. The artists consulted with members of the family to paint the pictures of their loved ones. Operation Motorman. By the spring of 1972, reprisals for Bloody Sunday and the outcry from them brought a temporary ceasefire in Derry. Yet, the IRA maintained control of the Bogside, operating its own form of governance in support of the local population. By July of 72, the British government sought to break the IRA's control and brought in massive fleets of tanks and troops to the Bogside, the largest collection of British troops in Ireland since World War II. The purpose of this action was to restore state control in the no-go areas of the Bogside. Well, word had gotten out that the invasion of troops to the Bogside was coming, and the IRA volunteers had fled across the border to the Republic of Ireland. The residents of the Bogside were left to face the consequences. Nearly 22,000 troops and 2 armored battalions and another 5,300 Ulster paramilitary forces were used to get into the Bogside. By the end of July 31st, 1972, all of the no-go areas of Northern Ireland were gone. 2 unarmed teenagers were killed. CS gas was used. The choice of the simple design of the British soldier breaking down a door in the Bogside was based on the location of the mural in relation to the other murals on the walk, and also its vantage point from the Derry walls. The image is so strong that it is easily seen from the walls. The compositional technique used by the artists was one of great strength and used a realism design. They again used the X format, where the soldier's knee is the axis of the X and the hammer falls along one of the X lines. The head of the hammer is lengthened for dramatic effect. The Saturday Matinee. The frustration of the population of the Bogside with the police actions and the persecution led to ongoing riots against the RUC and the B forces. The riots in Derry were regular events and came to be known as the Saturday Matinee because the weekend was the best time for working class members of the Bogside and school kids to riot. These riots of the late 1960s were small, but reflected the riots happening globally against discrimination and oppression. The mural depicts the courage of the lone individual against a massive invading force, such as the British invasion with 22,000 troops in the Battle of the Bogside in 1969. The artists intentionally compared it with the famous photo of the lone man standing in front of tanks in Tiananmen Square, Beijing in 1989. The Runner. Closely associated with the Operation Motorman mural, and right next to it in the Bogside mural walk, is the Runner mural. Whereas the Saturday Matinee mural depicts the individual's response to an army invasion, the Runner depicts the individual's need for survival against an army invasion. Rioting was a part of the Troubles in Northern Ireland and became something of a sport where kids would take part in them after school. During the summer, when the sectarian Protestant marching bands would stir up conflict, the riots increased. The CS gas depicted in the mural played an important role in the Troubles, especially in Derry, where over 1,000 canisters were used in the Battle of the Bogside alone. Its effects are increased for the young and the elderly, and the stinging smell lingers. The police force, known as the RUC, was overtly sectarian and pro-Protestant. It alienated most of the residents of the Bogside, and the result was the creation of no-go areas put in place by the IRA. The response, as we have learned, was Operation Motorman in 1972. The death of innocents. Young Annette McCavigan was the 100th victim of the Troubles and 14 years old when the British Army killed her as she ran away from a riot. She was shot at a distance with a high-velocity rifle. The artist wanted to make a statement about the young victims of war and of the Troubles in particular from both Catholic and Protestant backgrounds. They were also making a statement about guns as a failure of humanity to live at peace. Annette was painted as innocent born in the midst of chaos, and the butterfly and the crucifix are symbols of resurrection and rebirth. John Hume. John Hume, pictured on the top left of the mural, was the 1998 Nobel Peace Prize winner, shared with David Trimble, for his efforts in ending the Troubles in Northern Ireland and bringing about the Good Friday Peace Accords. Hume was the leader of the Social Democratic Party, a centrist party in Northern Ireland. He came from the Bogside and still lives in the Bogside today. Hume also won the 1999 Martin Luther King Peace Award. Hume's work with politicians in the United States, sympathetic to the Northern Ireland problem, meant that there was mounting pressure on England to find a solution to the Troubles. He was also elected to the European Parliament in 1979 and used his influence to urge the European Union to assist in ending the political troubles of Northern Ireland. The people of Derry voted in a referendum to have John Hume depicted on the mural as a man of peace who lived his life working for it. The mural also depicts Martin Luther King, as he was the man that Hume was most influenced by during his campaign for civil rights for Northern Ireland. Mother Teresa is also included, as she had been educated in Dublin and was herself involved in peace in Northern Ireland. Nelson Mandela is included in the bottom right of the mural, as his campaign for equality in South Africa ran parallel to the struggle in Northern Ireland. In addition, all four depicted on the mural won the Nobel Peace Prize at some point in their life. As former Bishop Edward Daly, the one painted on the Bloody Sunday mural, said, "They were the champions of the little people, the nobodies who are cast aside by most societies as of no worth. That is what makes these people great and joins them together." The Brooklyn Bridge is painted in the middle as a symbol of those who build bridges to create better futures. The bridge is also a symbol of reconciliation. This was one of Hume's favorite metaphors. The Brooklyn Bridge was chosen because it represented doing the impossible. It was built with Irish laborers from 1869 to 1883 in New York, and was believed to be a failure because it was so long that the spans would never be supported adequately. That wasn't true. The rumors that the bridge would collapse actually caused a stampede that killed 12 people. Likewise, dangerous rumors in the Northern Ireland peace process killed many and caused great divide. The Peace Mural. The final mural unveiled in 2004 was the Peace Mural. A shocking contrast to the monotone and dark colors of the previous murals, the Peace Mural provides a feeling of relief and hope for a future. The squares on the grid represent equality. Their colors are harmonious and depict health and life. The placement of the Peace Mural is such that it is the last thing you see when you leave the Bogside, and on the opposite end of the street from the Free Derry sign. Painted on top of the tiles is the white outline of a dove emerging from an oak leaf, which is the symbol of Derry. The dove flies upward toward the bright colors of the grid, leaving behind the darker colors of the past.